Good morning, all. So just for those who's joined the call so far, we're just going to give it a couple of minutes, just let other attendees join, and then we'll start the show. Good morning, all. I'm just going to give it a couple more moments to let the additional attendees join, and then we'll kickstart the show for you guys. So I think actually we'll maybe kickstart now, guys. We're coming up to 2 minutes past 10. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the show. It's been a while since I got in front of the crowd on an online webinar as such. Really good to be back, really good to be in the hot seat again, and really good to see all you guys joining today's show. So today's show is actually featuring a topic that's majorly discussed across the industry at the moment. I think just about every sector out there is definitely latching onto the buzzword, and that is Microsoft Copilot. And to joining me on the call today, I have one of my colleagues, a great friend of mine, and also one of our partners. We have Nick Banks from Ingram. Nick has been our partner now for quite some time. He's definitely a specialist when it comes to the Microsoft 365 stack. But I'll hand over to Nick for a very short introduction. So welcome, Nick, and thank you for joining the call.
Thank you, Jamie. Kind on the specialist term. So yes, my name is Nick Banks. So I'm a partner development manager at Ingram Micro Cloud. So Ingram Micro are a leading distributor globally for Microsoft and a Microsoft partner, and we are an indirect provider of cloud services. So I specialize in Microsoft 365 and security, and then more recently Copilot, which is what we're here today to talk about. So yeah, I've been in various roles over the years, and actually I was working at Microsoft about 6 months ago for about 3 or 4 years. So yeah, I've got a reasonable understanding of Microsoft internally and externally.
Hence the specialist word, you see, Nick. That's
Yeah.
the reason we called you a specialist there. So, but no, I mean, Nick, Microsoft Copilot. It's probably possibly one of the biggest trends, like I say, in business at the moment. It's a buzzword that everybody's using. People want to know about Copilots. People want to incorporate in their business. But in a nutshell, what is Copilot? Or Microsoft Copilot, if you can just give us a brief explanation.
So the best way to there's plenty of Copilots that Microsoft have got. I think they've probably got maybe 8 to 10 different versions, and within those versions, you've got probably another dozen Copilots within it. So the main one that we're going to kind of talk about today, which is the most in demand, I would say, is Microsoft 365 Copilot. But you may see Windows Copilot on your Windows 11 desktop. You've got things like Copilot for Bing, Copilot for Azure, and Copilot for security. So lots of Copilots. But basically, the best way to think of it is it's your own kind of personal AI assistant that's going to help you be more creative, more efficient, more productive, and generally just help you get better in Microsoft's programs. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I would say. I can get very technical if you wish, but yeah, it uses a thing called a large language model. So without getting too techie, these are used for text generation. And the large part of the large language model means that that particular model has been trained by hundreds of millions, if not billions of data points. So yeah, it's pretty smart. And the kind of language part is you can speak to it almost if it's a human. So it responds to natural language. So yeah, it has that ability to kind of understand context. So yeah, it's a superb tool, definitely.
Fantastic. I mean, you know, commercially, I think a few hundred million is being invested in Copilot. You know, and obviously the functionality it has. I mean, we do have a very short video to share with you guys, which I think will outline in finer detail what Copilot is and the functionality. So if we can kickstart that video, that'd be fantastic.
Whoa. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. Stand still, that's the motto, yeah. Brand new bands for the auto, oh. Foot to the ground, full throttle. Big energy for the night like lotto. Y'all talk lots, never this I felt plot. Vault full of songs, all of them bombs. Something like a minefield guy, boom. Get it, tickets running out quick. Bet it, never get it out big. Said it, never had to shout it. They said I couldn't ever do it, okay, how's it? Fit a week worth of work in a minute. Machine well oiled, you know how I stay efficient. To-do list written, I do this. Flows the same now. Paved the way, the snakes and fakes are chased out. Back to back, I changed the pace now. Had to stack the cash until the bank's out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
So there we have it, guys.
Funky
There we
video,
have
that
it.
one.
It is. I'd say something. Microsoft are spot on with their marketing because they know how to get you feeling excited. You know, on the back of that video, it's like, wow, I want Copilot, even though I don't fully understand it. What is Copilot? Give it to me now. You know. So, but no. To be honest with you, I mean that video explains a lot, Nick. But one of the questions that I have, which a lot of our customers also ask, is there's a lot of language models out there. Why Copilot and why now?
Yeah, you're right. There are there are quite a few different models. I guess the great thing about Microsoft is Office as a solution, as a product, is used by, I think, is over 1 billion people globally, and commercial businesses. I think it's a good few hundred million. So it's a product that we all know and love, and we use daily. And I think that's kind of one of the big reasons why now is the right time. And also you think about generative AI is kind of really taken off in the last year or two with ChatGPT. That's for you. So it only took ChatGPT 3 months to get to 100 million users. I can't remember the exact stat, but Facebook took something like 4 years to get to that stat. So there is a huge demand for it. But I think now we're at something like 200 million users globally. So yeah, there's a huge demand for it. And in that video, what I really liked about it was this particular Copilot works with your Office apps. So like in Outlook, it's going to help you create an email quicker. So potentially, I'm not the best at spelling and punctuation, but Copilot will aid you and it will coach you through that. So it's going to critique you. And I don't know if you saw it in the video, but you can change your emails to be more formal or more casual, or even more direct. You can even ask it to do it in a poem style. So it's got a bit of comedy in there as well, but the kind of, it's limitless what it could potentially do, and that's just Outlook, right? I mean, you've got Word is another example. So you can potentially you could completely create a custom brief based on a marketing document or a launch document from an FAQ. So yeah, it's a superb tool, and the whole idea of it is it will get you to probably 80% of the way there, just by the words that you prompt it in the documents that you reference within the tool. And that's the kind of beauty of it. So it will kind of accelerate your journey to get to where you want to be. And yeah, again, it's Excel, PowerPoint, Teams. It's all of those Microsoft apps that kind of we know and love. So Teams for me is probably the best one, I would say. So I don't know about you all, but I'm constantly full up with Teams meetings. I've got conflicting meetings. I miss Teams meetings. I've gone on holiday and I miss meetings. So there's a really nice feature called follow the meeting, and it basically lets you follow that meeting even though you're not in it. and it will give you a summary with actions with the people that were in that meeting and that were mentioned as well. So this could be a really useful tool if you are out of office or you can't get to every single meeting. So yes, it's a complete game changer for me, definitely.
Well, I think we've all been in the situation, Nick, of being on annual leave and having to join a meeting because it's crucial that you don't miss the information that's being given in that meeting, and that you have to take part in some sense, or at least hear what's been said. And we all know that
people, aren't we?
Yeah,
we can't work 24/7, but Copilot can.
I suppose as well, why Copilot? Why Microsoft Copilot as a language model in particular? It's the trust aspect as well, because there's been a lot of things out there with ChatGPT, being an open source platform. Is it really trusted? Well, Microsoft, that brand itself is a very trusted brand. Everybody at home knows the Microsoft brand. So I think that's another element of why Microsoft Copilot over any other language model out there. But it does, it certainly sounds like an absolute amazing tool for just about everyone, really. But the question that we get often is how do we access this? And is there a minimum requirement as a business that we need to meet in order to access Copilot and gain the benefits of its of its features?
So the demand currently has meant that there isn't such a thing as a free trial, and I get that question daily almost. So can I get access to this for free? So that there is a way you can access Microsoft Copilot, kind of the chat functionality. So like you would get for ChatGPT online, but the benefit with Microsoft is if you log in with an Enter ID account, it will protect your data. So you're not training the model or potentially having your data used by other people. So that's one of the critical things. But to get the actual apps with Copilot, there are some minimum requirements. So there is a minimum requirement for the business SKUs, which are business standard and business premium. And then more recently, as recently as last week, they added in business basic as well. So that's the complete set of business SKUs for Microsoft 365. And then for enterprise, that's great. And then for enterprise SKUs as well, you've got Microsoft E3, E5, Office E3 and E5. And also you've got education as well. So you've got A3 and A5 for faculty. So it's being, from I think it was January this year, it was only in, not a preview, but it was only for select customers that ordered a minimum of 300 licenses. And it was specifically on customers on enterprise agreements. But from Jan this year, or mid-Jan, they opened it up fully for everybody. So in fact, there's even more licenses that are available now, or even more prerequisite SKUs. So you've also got Office E1 and then Microsoft F1 and F3, which are the frontline SKUs. So pretty much all the SKUs that are out there for Microsoft, you can attach Copilot to. So that is great. And the minimum user limit now is 1. So you don't have to order 300 anymore. You can order just 1 if you wish, or 10.
Well, that was one of my concerns, Nick, when it was first released in that kind of trial phase, when it was being released to the enterprise level businesses of 300 plus users. It was the fact that you do sometimes get some sole traders who could use a PA, could use something like artificial intelligence as that virtual assistant for them, but they haven't got the funds to fork out 300 licenses, or vice versa. They haven't got enough money.
It has to change because, as you said, it's 300 people.
It's not a cheap event. So. But I mean, talking about cost, I mean, what is the cost per user to access Copilot? So obviously you've got the business SKU itself. So business premium, £18.10 per license per month. But what's the additional cost on top of that to add Copilot?
So £18.10 for business premium. That is on an annual commit as well, I will say. So
yes.
With Copilot, currently there is only one plan, and it is an annual upfront payment only for the year. So the MSRP is £296 and £40 per year, but you can co-term it to a license that ends before a year's time. So if you had a license that ended in December this year, you could just pay sort of like a pro-rata payment until December, so rather than the full £296.40. So that's a positive, but at the moment there are no plans to move it to a monthly model. So it is annual upfront only, which it's a commitment that you need to make. But a lot of companies they're kind of trialing it in 3, 4, 5 to 10 different users first before rolling it out at scale across the tenants. So but in my view, that isn't a particularly high price compared to what you could save in efficiencies. And
Yeah.
and one of the ROIs is that I was reading a report on it the other night. So you can achieve your ROI as long as an average salaried employee saves 30 minutes per week, or 2 hours per month, they say. But I have heard in some of the early kind of previews that people are saving 30 minutes a day or more. So
Wow.
potentially you could generate an ROI within a week for an average paid employee. So yeah, it may seem like a lot of money up front per user.
I suppose any company out there really, Nick, I suppose, who wants to test Copilot and see if it is right for their business or right for their role in particular, have a look at the 365 licenses that you have, and if one's due to expire in a month or two, then co-turn the Copilots on that just as a testing phase. But in terms of obviously touching on Copilot and it's sitting on the Microsoft 365 environment, and obviously alongside all the applications, Teams, Word, etc. In terms of actual data governance, would a company be better off having a strong data governance policy in place alongside a clean set of data before implementing Copilot to make it more efficient from the word go? Or doesn't it really matter? Would Copilot just do its thing regardless?
So as any Microsoft license is, this is an add-on license, so you can literally just switch it on and you can be ready to go within a couple of hours. But kind of as you've mentioned, I would probably recommend some things are done prior to that license switch on, which you could use a third-party specialist unless you have the in-house capabilities to do it. But things like access permissions and labeling of sensitive document types, I would recommend that they're all done prior. But if that's not something that you could potentially do right now, there are some other things. So there's a thing called restricted SharePoint search with Copilot. So that would allow you as an organization to disable certain SharePoints, so that if people are trying to search for certain things, because you hear those horror stories, don't you, that story, it's made up, but the Copilot to search for some data and they get the CEO's salaries and stuff like that. So that is like a story that you hear. I mean, I've not seen a real life example of that yet, but there are ways you can lock down your SharePoints so that people won't be able to search them and access them. But what Copilot will do anyway is it will find documents that you're already able to view. So actually it's not giving the person access to more things than they already have. It's almost like acting like a sniffer dog. It will go and find that bone or that document that is kind of hidden, and to be safe and secure, it's always recommended that you lock down those anyway, really, because like content oversharing is a real problem. So we should be making sure that we only give access to the right documents to the right people, and not sharing things with everybody sort of company wide. So yeah.
Essentially, Nick, then what I personally would recommend is, if you're in the Microsoft 365 stack already and you are connected to Microsoft Entra, is to obviously just align it to the same group policies and access rights as what's already set up in the AD as such.
And the great thing is, and the thing that Microsoft wants us to understand, is that Copilot will respect your current access permissions. So it won't just suddenly start pulling down data that you shouldn't have. So yeah, that's a critical thing that Microsoft want to get across, that you won't just get access to all the different documents that you didn't before. It's still the same, but this kind of shines a light on those documents for you and makes it easier for you to access. And that's one of the kind of USPs of Copilot. We spend a lot of time responding to emails, creating documents, searching for documents, but this will just accelerate that process and save us loads of time. So yeah, it will inherit those existing security, privacy, identity, and compliance policies. So yeah, there's no worries there. But a lot of companies don't have them in the first place, and that's potentially part of the problem. So it's definitely worth reviewing those things. And again, Microsoft's got their own subsidized tool that we can get access to, and your customers can as well, which is completely free. And we can do a review of where a lot of these things kind of sit, a lot of this data sits. But then it's, the cost to potentially fix all of those data problems is going to be chargeable by a third party, or if you've got the in-house capabilities, then yeah, you can do it in-house. So yeah, there is definitely a reason that we should look at data governance and have a strong data governance policy in place before we go. But there are some basic things you can do without, having to do that. And again, if you're just going to deploy it to 2 or 3 people that are senior stakeholders in the business, then, they probably have access to most things anyway, and that's not really the problem. So yeah.
Understandable.
Definitely.
No, understandable, Nick. Thank you for sharing. One of the things that I've really come to my mind over the last couple of months, we've talked about AI a few times in previous webinars, but how do you see, obviously we've spoken about how it's already influencing certain companies, obviously saving a lot of time with them repetitive, mundane, manual tasks, writing email, searching for documents, but how else would you see that it will influence business over the coming years?
So I guess the overall hope for me is that we're all going to become much more efficient, less stressed at work. So spending less, kind of as you've already mentioned, spending less time on those really mundane tasks, and responding to emails that really take time, but they could be done within a split second with Copilot. So one thing I will say is Copilot is called Copilot for a reason. It's not on autopilot. It won't do your job for you. It assists you like an assistant, really. So, and when you look at the cost of an assistant, that could be 30,000-40,000 pounds a year for a department or for a person. So actually Copilot's quite cost effective. But yeah, one of the influence wise, I think more and more companies are going to start to adopt AI in general and Copilot, and they reckon some studies I was looking at reckon that by 2030, 80% of businesses are going to be using at least one form of AI.
Yeah.
In multiple ways, and a lot of companies probably use many different AI models. So I think it's not going to go away. It's going to be here for the long haul. But yeah, it's going to drive creation. I think even though we may be more efficient, that those efficiencies and the potential creativity that we gain is going to generate new roles in businesses as well. So you can reinvest some of the costs potentially saved in new parts of the business. So yeah.
Well, talking about roles there, Nick, I mean, one of the things, a friend of mine, he went to a couple of different job interviews recently looking for a new role. And he actually chose a role with less salary because that role had AI and Microsoft Copilot already built into it. So we already had a virtual assistant there ready and waiting for him to join. So we took, I think it was £5,000 less salary per year just because he had access to Copilot in his role, and it made his life a lot more easier. So I think in terms of overall influence on business, it's also having an effect on the company which an employee chooses to work for. And I suppose on the back of
good way to look at it,
yeah. So I mean, do you want to attract that top talent in the future? If you do, then definitely look at an early adoption of Copilot or some form of language model to help you in the working day. If you are on 365, then Copilot is definitely the one for you. But I mean, with Copilot's machine learning and adaptability, so we've spoken about how it adapts to the existing 365 environment, how it can, kind of sit and work with you from day one. Would it take a long time to get used to how you work in business with your bespoke processes that you carry out? And obviously, would it take a little bit of time to start benefiting the company, or do you think it's something that would need to sit on the environment for a little bit of time before you do truly see that ROI?
I think a bit of both. So it will have an initial learning phase, if you like, and that can take some time. And again, that's how long is a piece of string. So I think it depends on, it needs to learning your communication style, learning common phrases and workflows, learning who the people are in the business. That can take, it's a big business, right? It can take quite a long time potentially. But also depends on how much data you've got in the business as well. So if you've got lots of legacy data, perhaps it's time that you looked at that data and made sure that it was still worthy and it didn't just need archiving and things like that. So I think it depends on the amount of users in the organization, the amount of data, but the actual functionality is instantaneous almost. As soon as you buy that license, you'll be able to get access to some of the functionality. So, basic things like email, drafting emails for you, that will be instant. You'll have instant access to that. So from an ROI point of view, you could already save time from day one just by drafting emails. And you talk about, you know, new starters within an organization. If I was a new starter in a company and I had access to Copilot, it would just mean that I have to ask people less questions and have to go and search for things more. You know, it's going to give you much more, not access, but much more, it's a much more efficient way to search for content, I would say. So yeah, it will take some time. And a lot of people do. They have a small number of users first to start a pilot, and then a month later, they'll start to consider rolling it out at a bigger scale. So basically, as soon as the licenses are switched on, the sooner it can get all that data indexed, and the faster it will become eventually.
Do you know what, Nick? You made a very good point there in terms of being a new starter and you know, having to go off and ask questions. A lot of the time, you're being trained by another colleague, or you know, your line manager has also got another daily worth of tasks to carry out as well. Often you go, "Can I have help?" 10, 15 minutes later, they come across. But with Copilot there, I suppose they can act as that kind of first point of
Like a
call
buddy.
to answer any questions, a little buddy for you. Yeah, because obviously it knows your
100%.
environment, you know, wholeheartedly. But I mean, you also touched on another point there as well, Nick, about how you speak to Copilot.
Yes.
Depending on what you get back from it, you know. So, you know, is there a specific way of speaking to Copilot to get the most accurate and efficient response from it?
There is actually, and one of the things we've seen in the early stages is people probably not talking to it in the way that gets the most out of it. And it's not like an art form, but there are things you can do to help it to get to the kind of point that you, or the data that you want. And that is be really specific with it. So, you know, have structure, tell it that you want it to avoid something so that it doesn't give you the wrong information. That's quite key as well. Provide context for it. So an example of that would be if you ask it to put itself in the shoes of a professor at a college, as an example, and you're speaking to a group of teenagers potentially, right? That could be one of the things you ask it. But then you could be even more specific, in because teenagers range from 13 to 19. So you could say, you're a college professor, you're speaking to a group of 15-year-olds. Give me an example of a lecture on, I don't know, biology, human biology, something like that. So be really specific, and then say, can you give me that in 300 words, or if it's within PowerPoint on 10 slides. So just be really specific with it. And also, I know this is going to sound mad because it is AI, but also give it encouragement. So tell it when it's got the right information. I know that seems mad, but that could also help.
It's funny, Nick, because we always see them movies like Terminator, AI with a consciousness, and you've just said then give it a pat on the back when it's done a good job. So
and that's the thing. Don't fear this particular type of AI that Microsoft has created. Don't fear it, because it isn't going to harvest your data and sell it to somebody. You're all protected. Microsoft cannot risk you and your data being stolen because of their AI tool. You have to trust that Microsoft know what they're doing. I mean, there are other AI tools out there which may not be as upfront and secure. So yeah, that's another key thing. You can be pretty safe in the knowledge that if you're using a Microsoft tool, that it's fairly secure. And it should do what it says in the tin as well.
Microsoft are the trusted body when it comes to technology. They're one of the most well-known outfits out there. So much for me personally, much more trust Copilot than what I do ChatGPT, as an example. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on, Nick, because obviously we've got the integration with the Microsoft 365 stack, Word, Teams, PowerPoint, etc. The crucial thing for me is people do use the 365 apps. They do use the stack. But then alongside of that, 50% of their business is also carried out by a key line of business software, such as Salesforce or Zoho CRM. Is there an integration? Available with Copilot into these other third-party applications, such as Salesforce or Zoho CRM, etc.?
Simple answer is yes. It will. In fact, there's quite a few plug-in partners, they're called already. And you know, this is still it's not that new, but it's been around for over a year now, but it's still quite a new product. So there are still lots of opportunities to extend it and to get more partners from Microsoft in the Copilot kind of arena. But yeah, in the ones you mentioned, so Salesforce and Zoho, yes, definitely you can. That might be an additional cost though, because there is a product called Copilot for Sales, which you would sell instead of the Copilot for 365 SKU, which then gives you access to your CRM systems in your email and in your chat and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it will do it, and there's lots of third-party applications that it already supports and works with, such as Spotify, Adobe, and there's one for TeamViewer as well. And yeah, some of the big brands have already. So yeah, it's kind of watch the space really, but it can do those CRM tools, the majority of the most popular ones already.
Because that was a big thing for me and the customers that I speak with is, you know, that 50% of their business is in the 365 stack. The other 50% is in the CRM system where they're managing customers daily. And would they get the same benefit working in predominantly the third-party application rather than the 365 stack? And there was a case of potentially manually having to repeat the work that you're doing, or, you know, duplicate the work in some sense. So it's really good to know that there's add-ons, specifically, you know, Sales Copilot and Security Copilot. I think you mentioned earlier there's around 8 so far, and I can know in
that's
Microsoft.
I'm not saying that I know off the top of my head, but there are more.
Yeah.
I know there's probably about 100 or more.
Well, I can assure Microsoft will carry on building on those,
yes.
knowing them. So, but that's kind of finally leading into the last question, really, Nick, is what do you see to be the future of Copilot? And personally, what would you like to see to be introduced in terms of new features? Maybe something just that would benefit your role, or something that would benefit your customers that you've seen directly.
I think quite a cool feature at the moment is very much text related, so it will produce text and it will add in images from online sources, which is great. But I think what I would like to see in the future is an add-in for video and images, so you can create images and create video within apps. Your Microsoft 365 apps. So when you're creating that PowerPoint presentation, you could also create a lovely image from AI. I mean, that, you know, you can do that anyway. You can come outside of the app and do it, but it would just be good to have it all within one window, so you're not having to constantly go backwards and forwards, log into a different window. So I think that'd be quite a good
cancelling out that repetitive task again, which is exactly what AI is.
Making you more efficient.
Yeah.
And then I think, let's say you're a marketing team, it would just be nice that you could have that capability of creating images and infographics all within like PowerPoint or something like that. So yeah, just more capabilities. Even audio could be a really, really good one as well. And you could potentially create like ads and things like that. So rather than having to pay lots of money for third-party tools, it's all kind of within one box. And then we've also got Copilot for Sales. And I think there's a Copilot for Finance as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if in the future we'll see much more industry and department specific tools for Copilot. So that's something that I think will come, more templates, more extensibility. So yeah, another thing that is coming though, which I wanted to mention, is when you're creating and drafting an email, you can use 3 or 4 responses to respond. So you can do like formal, casual, in a poem, which is hilarious. But there is some on the roadmap called Sound Like Me or Respond Like Me. So it's going to understand how you interact with individuals, and it will be able to draft you an email based on your typical responses to a person. So the CEO response, you know, your response to a CEO in an organization may be very different to your colleague in the same department. So it'll understand. So it will make it more difficult to know if AI has generated that response or you've generated it. So I think it'll just get smarter.
We've all seen them LinkedIn posts that's been generated by ChatGPT.
Yeah, we know.
We all know how they look like now. So, but no, it's really good. I mean, that's exactly what I want to see, to be honest, is more integration with a massive variety of roles and functions. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned, Nick, is that kind of generating an image for you based on what you've told it to generate. So I think that would be phenomenal in terms of innovation. But for me, the future of Copilot for me is again, it's just leaning towards that efficiency, letting that person, the actual person, focus on what's truly worthy to their role. For me, being in sales, it's closing that new business. Well, the repetitive, manual, mundane tasks, sending the emails, and generating the proposals, let Copilot do that work, because they're going to be accurate. They're going to do it based on the data sets that you've got, and letting you just then do what you do best, and that's sitting in front of that customer and trying to close that deal.
Another really good one I haven't mentioned actually was we all have holidays, right? It's our right as a UK citizen. And when you come back from holiday, you just get that dread, don't you, on a Sunday night? If you work Monday to Friday, that is. I mean, you could work any hours, but all those emails in your inbox. And again, Copilot is going to be able to summarize those things for you and give you the most urgent tasks that you need to respond to most quickly. So it will make you more efficient, and it should hopefully take away a little bit of that stress or worry about opening your inbox on a Monday morning and just having 2,000 emails, which you know where to start with. So yeah, that's another feature which I haven't mentioned, but I think it's a really, really good one.
No, to be honest, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the next 6 months is going to be exciting in terms of AI development, especially from the Microsoft side of things. But I think just to end this off with, I think if you're still and ahhing around whether Copilot's right for you as an organization, saving potentially up to 30 minutes per day, what could you be doing with that extra 30 minutes or the extra, 4 hours per week or whatever it may be? Can you see the business slowing down because of Copilot? No, the only thing I can see is it's going to speed up. You're going to carry out more tasks. You're going to be more productive, sell more contracts to new customers, deliver new services. It's just going to be a benefit from the word go. And for a very small cost of what we've discussed, you've probably already got the relevant business license to attach it to already. It's a very small annual cost, but the ROI can give you on the back end is unrivaled. So I definitely think we should all be open to adopting AI in some form in our roles or in our lives, for that matter. But Nick, we've come to the end of the webinar, but we're actually going to go into a Q&A session now. So for those in the audience, if you've got any questions for either myself or my colleague Nick, definitely fire them away in the comment section, and we'll be happy to answer the questions.
Good summary, by the way, Jamie. It's exactly how I would have done it.
No problem. But no, honestly, Nick, it's been really good having you in today. And like I say, thank you for sharing your knowledge with me and with Zhero, and obviously our audience as well. I think we should definitely revisit this topic, in a couple of months' time, maybe 3 or 6 months down the line, see what new features have come out and have been implemented in the meantime, and see the evolution of Copilot, because it is a big thing. It's massive for everybody out there, and I think if we should keep a very close eye on it, and everyone's welcome to join again in around about 6 months. So,
good stuff. Look forward to it.
But it doesn't look like we've got any questions coming through yet. We'll give it 5 or 10 minutes for any questions, and then we'll wrap up.
We can always respond later today anyway in the chat if people are watching it recorded. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it.
By all means, everybody watching still now, if you do have any questions and you don't want to ask them in a public forum, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself. Oh, Nick, we have a question come from Isaac. So Isaac has asked, is Copilot affordable and accessible for SMEs? So if you wanna take that one, Nick, to start off with.
Yeah, I think we've already kind of touched on it. It's definitely affordable. In that, I guess the only kicker is the annual upfront payment. So some customers like to pay monthly, so that is maybe a potential stumbling block. But I think the potential ROI from a time-saving point of view is why it should be affordable and achievable, because for me personally, saving a couple of hours a week is invaluable. I'm often working into the evenings, so yeah, having that ability to respond to things quicker and create drafts much quicker is I think it's more about an ROI rather than I guess affordability. But yeah, I mean, when you compare it to other products in the market, so Google have a product called Gemini, it's similarly priced. So
it's very much the same, a similar cost no matter what you go to, whether Microsoft Copilot or Google's AI. It's a similar cost across the board. One of the follow-on questions that Isaac said has just popped into my mind, Nick, is do you think Microsoft would be more flexible in the future in terms of the billing cycle, and whether they would allow you to pay for it monthly, aligned to your 365 license that you currently pay for monthly?
I can't speak for Microsoft, but I would say that based on all of their other licensing models, a monthly plan would be something that I think would come in the future. So yeah, definitely. I can't confirm that it would happen. I don't know that it will happen, but it would make sense that it would, so that it falls in line with every other product that Microsoft sells. But one thing I would say is that it does, having it for 1 month. If you have it for a month and don't see the benefit, then I think you're doing something wrong. And Microsoft's got plenty of tools that can help you with that adoption piece.
And as many of the
maybe you've not deployed it to the right department potentially, or the right people. So if you've got that person in the business that needs help with Excel and that's constantly asking you questions, you know, they would be a good example of why you could utilize Copilot.
Yeah.
And also the cost to train someone on Excel, those courses cost hundreds, if not thousands. And actually, Copilot is, in effect, it's about £25 a month, something like that. When you break it down.
So when you look at the cost of a course or employing somebody truly skilled in Excel and databases versus the £25 cost for your license for Copilot, I think that answers the question, to be honest, Nick. So we've got another question coming from Brett. Thank you, Brett. Brett has asked, what about single users? So I'll take this one. So as we covered off earlier on, Brett, so I think it was as of late January this year, Microsoft opened up the Copilot availability to single users. So anything from 1 user above. It was only prior to that in the trial phase where they locked it down to, I think, was it 300 users, Nick, to confirm?
Minimum. And it was only on an enterprise agreement. So it completely sort of cut just for enterprise customers, basically. So for a small medium business, less than sort of 300 users, you had no way you could access it because it wasn't possible. So now a single user can absolutely buy a license.
Perfect. There we are, Brett. And if you have any more questions on that, feel free to post them in the chat or get in touch with myself, and we'll show you how you can access and purchase some licenses. But any other questions, guys, from those in the audience? Please feel free to put me on the spot. And Nick, we love being put on the spot because you tend to get the truth out of us at that stage. So, but no, Nick, I mean, it's been a journey for me in the last 6 months, learning about artificial intelligence, language models, how they can benefit your role. I mean, like I say, we've all used ChatGPT when that got released out to the public. We all used it to type up the quick email and copy and paste. I think that's now becoming more recognized. You know, like we said earlier, the LinkedIn posts and the emails, which have been generated by AI. I think Microsoft, with the functionality you've outlined so far, is going to go well and truly beyond that. Here's 1 or 2 or 3 responses. It's going to go, like you mentioned, how do you want to respond? Do you want to respond casually? It will learn how you've been speaking to that person in the past. So, you know, Nick, me and you, for example, we're not strangers to each other. I often write an email saying, hey, mate, rather than, hi, Nick, how are you today? You know, and cut out the formalities. Copilot would be able to instantly write back to you in the same manner that I usually talk to you, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, because you maintain that business relationship, that relationship you built with that person in particular, that personal one. And you're not even typing yourself, you're getting AI to do the job for you. So I think it's marvelous. But we haven't got any more questions coming, guys, and we're reaching 10:45 now. So I think we'll wrap up there. But Nick, as a final word for myself, thank you ever so much for coming into the show today. It's really good to catch up with you, and I'll be sure to be hooking you into the next one as well, my friend. So to keep an eye out for an invitation from me. But no, any final words from yourself, Nick, in regards to today's webinar or Copilot in particular?
I think you summarised it quite well. So it's an amazing tool, and it's really in demand, and that is why there is no trial at the moment. So if you want to give it a go, just £6 commitment, but I think it's a pretty good cost, really, considering the potential ROI benefits that you're going to get on efficiencies. So yeah, give it a try. It's popular and in demand for a reason, I would say. And once you do have it, just work with it, prompt it in the right way, and you'll get
We've
to
got
what you need to get to.
Couple more questions coming, Nick, at last minute as well, and I know these two people personally, so we're definitely going to let them have their question. So Isaac has asked the second question: do companies need to buy into Copilot across the board, or can individual departments use it? So I think maybe a shared license across departments. I think Isaac's asking there.
Yeah, again, you can license as little or as many people as you wish. So it's a pretty easy one. So yeah, if you wanted to license a marketing department so they could collaborate effectively, then that's a good idea. Or if you just wanted to give a couple of people in the department access to the license, that's also possible. But the license sits with the individual. If you were to then move the license from one individual to the next, it will lose all of that data and forget it, and then it will have to start the indexing again and start the kind of the background processes again. So that's worth mentioning. So if you do remove that license, you lose that capability for that individual, but also the data that it's understood. So yeah, you do hear of people going, well, I'll just keep giving it to different people so they can all try it. And it's like, well, that is a great idea in theory, but in practice, it's not that smart.
I suppose it's like you say, it's machine learning, and if you're taking it from one user to the next, it's not really having time to learn anything and benefit you in your role in particular. So
and that's kind of why there's that annual upfront payment, and that Microsoft wants you to get used to it and use it for a year, because I don't think a week to 4 weeks is enough time to fully get to grips with it, unless you're really competent in using AI and prompting in the first place.
Yeah. Understandable. Thank you, Nick. We do also have a final question. So we've got from Vern. So Vern has asked, are there training options for anyone to support businesses that wants to implement but doesn't know where to start? I think if I can start off the answer, Nick, and then I'll pass over to yourself. Yeah. So Vern, here at Zhero, we've got the relevant partnerships in place with specialists in terms of L&D for the Microsoft 365 stack. Happy to have a discussion with you. Happy to place you in contact, and we can maybe take it from there. Nick, I mean, from your perspective at Ingram and a broader Microsoft sense, is there any documentation, any kind of forums where people can visit and get to know or start training themselves in terms of Copilot, or is anything that you would personally recommend?
Yeah. So Microsoft's got their thing called an adoption toolkit. Kind of top tips, hints on how to use each individual app, so how to get the best out of it, and sort of things you could ask it to get the responses that I know are really, really kind of beneficial to a user and an individual. So there's plenty, and in fact, Microsoft's got a YouTube channel called Microsoft 365, and it's got a playlist of all the different apps and demonstrations so you can see what it can do. That's a really, really good place just to go. Simple, and it's on YouTube. You can just see some of the stuff that it can do, and then just replicate that yourself. So yeah, it's not necessarily in-depth training as such, but there are companies such as yourself that you can pay a bit extra to get some more one-to-one tuition or training to large groups, that sort of stuff. So yeah.
I always encourage, like you said, Nick, going out and looking at a video and replicating that yourself, because if you can carry out that task, it's less of a cost for that training aspect to begin with. So definitely go out, and again, knowledge is power. If you can learn to do it yourself, and you learn the most efficient way for your company of doing it, you can pass that knowledge down to other people in the company as well.
And there'll be plenty of case studies coming in the future from Microsoft, I'm sure. I haven't seen any, if many, at the moment. So yeah.
We're still in very early adoption phase at the moment, aren't we? So I think, give it 6 months. I think we'll have a plethora of documents and case studies to reflect back to. We've got another question coming, Nick, from Anri. So Anri has asked, would it be effective if only certain departments were to implement Copilot?
Yes. Yes and no, I would guess. I mean, Nirvana would be to have every single person in the organization utilizing it, so you can be ultimately completely efficient as a business. But some really good use cases are, and I've already mentioned marketing. So having that particular department would be ideal, because it's quite a creative department, and sales and they're quite linked. So having that ability to create content, create slides, create marketing briefs quickly and efficiently is massively beneficial. I mean, I don't know how long it would take the average marketing person to create a launch brief. That could be weeks, if not days. But with Copilot, the potential is that you could get to an almost, 75%, 80% stage almost instantly. So it's going to accelerate that kind of phase of development, if you like, and it will give you a nice template at the end which you can work within. So one thing I would say is Copilot isn't perfect. It's not going to give you the finished article, but what it will give you is a nearly complete version which you can then adapt and critique. That's what I would say is.
Well, I'm sure our head of marketing would love that, to be honest with you, Nick, with the weekly newsletters, because there's nothing more painful than trying to find last minute content to put out there. So, no, I think that'd be absolutely phenomenal.
By the way, superb example of what would be beneficial.
Well, another role which I've personally seen it being quite beneficial is legal. Solicitors and barristers and clerks. Document management, for example, is a big thing with Copilot. So I've seen some case studies around it really truly benefiting the legal sector. But again, sales as well. As sales guys, Nick, we hate admin. It's a well-known fact. None of us like completing admin. So if we can get a VA to do that for us, a AI VA, then that's even more beneficial for us. We can sit here doing what means most to us, and that is being in front of people and closing that deal.
Yeah. How long does it take to write notes up and summarize a meeting? We have a meeting for an hour, then half an hour or an hour is spent summarizing, reviewing, or even preparing for a meeting. So if you can cut that time down, I mean, if you're in a Teams meeting, as an example, it will create the notes for you and it will summarize it. So after the meeting, you've not got to do anything. You can just copy and paste that into an email and send it to the customer, the client, the department, or the person within the business. I mean, I would normally sit there on OneNote I use, and I would type up notes personally, and then I would, which means I'm not giving the person in the call my full attention or as much attention as I could. So
that's actually a really good point, Nick. Is I'm often minute taking, so they're explaining to me their IT requirements. I'm typing my notes away. But in that time of focusing on my notes, am I really focusing on what the customer's saying? Am I missing one or two crucial points that's being said in that meeting? You've raised a very good point there, Nick, actually. And I think Copilot, again, it's going to make you be more accurate in your role. It's going to make you faster in your role, because you're going to get that brief written up a lot quicker. Like you mentioned, the manual stuff in terms of taking notes to build up to a meeting, or take it or reflecting on your notes that you've taken during the meeting thereafter. All of this is time, and time costs money. And what can we do with additional time and money? The companies can reinvest back into their organization based on the cost saving that they've seen. They can purchase another staff member to carry out exactly the same role in sales or whatever it may be. The possibilities for me in terms of Copilot and AI are literally endless. And I think this is the realm that we're going into. Is you see a lot of people out there fearing. You see a lot of people out there fearing AI, whether it's going to take over their role. And I've always stuck to the saying of, it won't take over your role. It'll only enhance your role. What will take over your role is another person which has adopted artificial intelligence into their daily routine already. They're going to take over your role. That is the threat that you want to be watching out for, is somebody that already knows how to utilize AI in their daily routine.
The thing is, with anything in this world, is there are always people out there that are out there to exploit others. So it doesn't matter what tool it is, bad people will find ways to use that tool to benefit themselves and to exploit people. So that's one thing I will say, is there are plenty of tools out there already that get used to exploit people. We just have to trust that Microsoft as a business with this particular product are not going to do that. They're not going to exploit you. They're going to protect you. So.
Superb. No, I agree, Nick. Fully agree there. But no, I think we've reached the end of the show. Everybody who's attended today and posted the questions, thank you ever so much for your attendance. It does mean a lot to see your names pop up in the chat and attendee list. We do have another webinar approaching tomorrow around Zoho applications, and bespoke applications, low code, no code. So please do drop in for that one there. Nick, I expect to see your name popping up as a visitor if you do have a spare 5 minutes tomorrow. But no, as like I say, as a final word from me, Nick, it's been wonderful having you in the call today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge on Copilot and Microsoft 365. It's been undoubtedly one of the best webinars that I've ever carried out for me personally, learning new things. And I'll be sure to give you a call and pull you into one in the future as well, Nick. So a massive thank you from Zhero, and thank you from our audience for taking part as well. Well, I hope everyone has a good day, guys, and thank you ever so much for joining.
Cheers, everyone.